Okay, good morning everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get started with today's webinar. My name is Jen and I'm going to be covering this webinar today, covering assigning people to groups and classes. Now this is going to be in our membership 201 workbook if you're following along with those. And if you have any questions during the webinar, we have a questions panel over on the webinar toolbar on your screen. You can type those in and I will try and answer them as I'm going if they're relevant for everybody. If you have questions about your specific data, hang on to those, give us a call, send us an email. But if you have a general question about today's topic, go ahead and type that in. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. You'll notice we are working today in version 20.17.3. So I'm going to go ahead and open up our membership module. This is where we work with our groups and classes. Okay, and there are two different ways that we can add people to our groups and classes. And the way you decide which way you're going to do it is whether you want to add multiple groups and classes to one person's record, or if you have a bunch of people to add to one group, then you would do that in the assignment screen. So we're going to start out with the idea that we're adding multiple groups to one person. So we're going to go ahead and open up the people file. And you can use the person lookup drop-down up here to bring up the desired individual. I'm going to grab Ann Ellison here, and I'm going to go to the Groups and Classes tab right there on the individual record, Groups and Classes. Now on this tab, if this person did have any groups and classes assigned, they would be showing up here already. If I tab through a little bit, we can see there's one. Amanda Frey has an assignment, and we can stretch this out and show the full field, UMW Women's Group. That's one of our available groups and classes if we click this drop down. Now, let's go ahead and say we wanted to add Amanda as a teacher for the youth choir. Oh, and that is popping up because I chose it from the drop-down. So this will remove her from that group and add her to youth choir. And that's not actually what I wanted to do. So I'm going to say no. I'm going to come up to the line above this gray bar, and this is where I add a new group or class. So if I pick youth choir, and I can choose to add starting and ending dates if I'd like, or I can leave those blank. I'm going to leave them blank for now, and I'm going to go ahead and choose teacher as the code for Amanda for the youth choir. Now you can see when I click that role drop down, I have a couple of choices. I have chair, teacher, and youth assistant. Now, chair would probably refer to the chair of a board or some other group like that. And so the chair does not have a check in this teacher box. And that is going to affect how the sorting is done. So we can add additional codes to the role by clicking this plus minus edit button right here. And I could add an additional code. Perhaps I want to use D for director. And I can add that, and then I can mark her as the choir director by selecting the item instead of marking her as a teacher. Now I could go on to add some comments if I'd like. Pressing that down arrow gives me plenty of space to type whatever. And I could go on to the next column and that would stay there. I'm not going to leave that. Now transfer date and transfer reason, those probably aren't going to be used that often, but if you do want to transfer someone to a different class or out of a class, you could fill these out with a date and a reason. And the reasons, just like the roles, you press this plus minus edit button and you can add different transfer reasons. Maybe we want LA for left the area. And if you press the X, it'll clear it out. And if I press enter, it will add that down to the actual selected groups and classes area. Now what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and enroll Samantha, Amanda's daughter, in the youth choir. And she's already actually in there, so that's great. So next we can do skills and interests. Skills and interests are different than groups and classes. You can see they don't have starting and ending dates. They have a level and comments. So if I choose a skill of vocal music, I can choose a level of active participant, and that would be a good descriptor for Samantha here, who's going to be enrolled in the youth choir. We can also record that she has vocal music as a skill. Again, you have a comments field where you could type whatever you'd like. And then tabbing over or hitting enter on your keyboard will move that down. And then I can click save, or if I navigate to the next record, it saves it for me. So that's how we add them from the individual records. If I come up here at the very top of the screen to groups and skills, let me highlight that. I then have an assign groups and an assign skills button. If I click assign groups, and then I can choose the category of classes or, one of the other categories to look at just a shortened list here. And I can choose whichever group I want. How about serving the church? And I can add as many people as I want from the left-hand side of the screen, either by double-clicking on them or by using the arrow keys here in the middle of the screen. Now, when you're using this assignment screen, you have the option of entering a date range right here that would apply to everyone that you're adding right now. You can also choose to view only the past, present, or future people enrolled in a particular group. The classes are listed in here by default by code, but if you click on either the word code or the word description, you'll rearrange the sort order of the groups in the list. It's based on either the code or the description. And you can see I have a tab up here at the top for skills and interests. And when I click it, it's going to ask if I want to save the changes I made. And so I'll say, yes, I'm going to save those changes. And I can add dates if I want, or I can click cancel to choose not to add dates. And now I'm on the skills and interests page. Now, I can also get there by clicking on assign skills. Both are the same screen, technically, they're just on two separate tabs. So I could choose an interest from my list. How about painting? And I can go on and add anybody I feel like or anybody I have on a hard copy list. All right. So One additional way that we can assign people to groups and classes is and skills and interests is by using the find grid. So if I come back to people and I click find, let's say I want to find everyone in a particular age group so that I can assign them to our youth group. So I'm going to go is between, let's do 12 to 19. We're going to look for everybody who is ages 12 through 19, and I'll press Add Selection, and then I'll click Find. And this is going to be a list of all my 12 to 19-year-olds so that I can add them into a youth group. Now you'll see here we're viewing the mailing label, and that's why it says Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so. If I scroll to the right, eventually I'll have a column for first name. So there's my first name column. So these are all of my kids who are between 12 and 19. And I have this little button up here that says Assign. So I'm going to go to Assign Groups and Classes. And I'm going to choose my Youth Volunteering Group. And let me see here. What I need to do first is I need to check the box next to everyone's name. That's the step I missed there. Sorry about that. So when I check this box at the top, it selects everyone who fit my criteria, all my 12 to 19-year-olds. And then when I click Assign Groups Class, then I can choose that Youth Volunteering Group. And now I'm only seeing my list of those people on the right-hand side, or I mean on the left-hand side, sorry. We're going to move them to the right-hand side by clicking Select All and adding them to this group. So that's how we get all of a particular search, all of a certain age into a certain group. So that would work for any other search criteria you might want to do. Perhaps we want to, and anytime you click an X, it's going to ask you to save. So that is a safeguard there for you. So this Find Grid assignment screen works with any search you might do. I could do a new search and I could do, let's say, gender is female, and let's do, whoops, not gender again. Directory report order is 1 or 2. So this will give me all of my females who are the primary or secondary in their family. And then I could go ahead and assign all of the females who are the secondary or primary in their family to the women's group. You can do select all, and I can move them over, and now I've added all of my adult women into the women's group. Then I can click Save. And again, it's going to ask for start and end dates. I can enter them if I want, or I can click Cancel. Now, the same thing is going to apply for the Skills and Interests tab. If all of these folks have an interest in quilting, let's say, or even if only some of them do, I can go through and I can select just a few of these folks. And using my Control key on my keyboard, I can skip around and I can highlight a few different people and move them over. So you've got several different options for adding folks. Now, what if I wanted to print labels to send to all of my, my folks who like quilting? I could go ahead and click Print up here, and I could print a list of these people. I could print labels, or I could send them all an email if they have email addresses and if I have emails set up in my church windows. I'm going to show you how to do labels real quick. And it gives me the option to sort these labels for this group, this skill, in a different order if I'd like to. So I'm going to go ahead and put them in zip code order, and then I'm going to alphabetize them within the zip code order. So sort field 1 is the primary sort, and sort field 2 is the secondary sort. I'll go ahead and click Next. And it's going to gather my data. And since these are individuals, not families, I'm going to choose the template of names instead of mailing label. The mailing label will use the Mr. and Mrs. so-and-so field. Names will just print the first and last name. And I'm going to choose to do one label per individual, and then click Print. And there's my sheet of labels in numerical order by zip code. And then you can see all of my 43230 folks are in alphabetical order. We've got Amanda Frey coming before Molly Mitchell. And I'll show you just to see, if I were to have the mailing label template selected instead of the names template, like I was saying, you can see it now says Mr. and Mrs. so-and-so, and that's not what we want in this case. So we want to choose that individual names label choice. Okay, so I know that was pretty fast, but that covers adding folks to groups and classes or skills and interests. Now to come over to my questions, Evelyn was asking how we remove a person that was assigned in error. All we have to do is click on their name and use the arrow pointing left to remove them from that skill or interest or that group or class. It works the same way on either tab. I'll say yes, I'll save that change. So that is how we add or remove people completely from a skill. Now, a lot of times with the groups, we wouldn't want to actually remove people. We would want to give them a starting and an ending date. For example, let's come to one of our Sunday school classes where you can see we have a history here of Bella Lewis and Ruth Miller being enrolled in this group back in the 2014-2015 school year. I can even choose to sort it by those dates so that I can see who is in the class currently and who used to be. And if I go ahead and uncheck past up here, it hides everyone who has an end date, who is considered to no longer be enrolled in that class. And I could also choose to view just a specific date range. If I recheck past, maybe I only want to see the folks who were involved in, let's see, 01/01/2014 through, let's do 01/01/2016 just to encompass everybody. And I can uncheck everything except those dates, and then I'm only getting the folks who are in those dates. Pretty cool. We can view a lot of customization in here now. Okay, so we are at 11:20. That means we're at our time for today. So if anybody has any questions, any additional questions, get those typed into the questions panel. And thank you all for stopping by this Friday morning and watching our webinar. And if you don't have any questions, you can go ahead and sign out. And thanks again. I'll stick around for a few minutes just to wait for any questions that might be coming in. Becky's wondering how to see how many people are in a certain group or class. Without printing a report or labels, you could use the find grid to find out the total number if you don't want to count the records. So if I were to close this and click find again and start a new find, I can click the drop down, groups and classes. Let's choose our first and second grade Sunday school. So you choose whichever class you want. You can choose whether you want to see the people in the past, present, future, or a specific date range, or all of them. I'm going to stick with present and click OK. Then add my selection to the find and click Find. And then up here at the top of the grid, whoops, I meant to grab my highlighter. It says 3 records. So the grid is your friend if you have questions about numbers, how many people fit a certain criteria, and if you want to see that list of people and be able to edit them instead of having to run a report or labels. Okie doke. Any other questions today, folks? You're very welcome, Becky. Okay, doesn't seem like there are any more questions, so I'm going to go ahead and close the webinar. Thanks again, and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.